also have to purchase music. And it has to happen in an organized, codified fashion to make sure that you are all taken care of and internal organization things are taken care of. Will you all please help me thank first Miss Carolyn and Smith. Will you also please help me thank Miss April Green. So we're going to head into Brahms, but I was just curious to know for a moment, what do you know about Johannes Brahms? Please raise your hand, and if you know anything, a fun fact, something you're not sure if it's totally correct that you heard in another choir, or you've read on Wikipedia when you were preparing for this concert, or read in the description of a YouTube video, what do you know about Johannes Brahms? Cecilia.
He was very good friends and much loved Schubert and Clara Schumann.
With Robert and Clara Schumann, yes, he was very, very dear friends with the Schumann family. And then in 1854, Robert Schumann tries to commit suicide, is then put into an insane asylum for about 2 years, and dies in the insane asylum. Only Brahms is able to visit him for those 2 years on a weekly basis, and Clara is able to visit Robert Schumann like a day or two before he passes away. And she's unable to see him over those 2 years, and Brahms acts as a go-between. So the relationship he forms with Clara is very close and very emotional, and there might be some romantic undertones, but it's as a representative to her husband in this asylum, so any feelings he may have towards her are unrequited, and it's a familial, friendly, close, loving relationship that at times becomes a little strained throughout his life. But yes, a very close relationship with the composer Robert Schumann and Clara Schumann, a very famous composer in her own right, but largely a pianist, a performer of the keyboard instrument in the middle of the 19th century. Excellent, Cecilia. Anyone else, please? Mark.
He was a huge fan of Beethoven.
Yes.
To the point where his first symphony was considered by many to be Beethoven's 10th.
It is, and this is an awesome fact. In fact, Wagner, when writing about Brahms, insults Brahms and talks about his first symphony being the 10th of someone deceased. And it is because he writes his first symphony in C minor, and it is a very long exposition in C minor and an overwhelming symphony. And so a lot of people believe that Brahms used Beethoven Symphony No. 5, ba-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da, as the model. Awesome comment. Anyone else? Yes, Casey.
In his leader, he writes particularly beautifully for the mezzo voice.
Okay.
It's the only time I really wish I had been a mezzo
To sing that breath.
Brahms leader.
So
It just is not right in the soprano voice.
I'll share the reason that that is the case and why the alto rhapsody exists and several other pieces for the lower voice part is Brahms was best friends with a violinist and composer named Joseph Joachim, and the relationship between them was very close, and the violinist's wife, was a contralto. And so several of his pieces for lower voice were actually written for her, and in fact, she sang at the premiere of the Brahms Requiem, but didn't sing anything from Brahms Requiem. The premiere of the piece actually involved, after the third movement, excerpts from Messiah, because it was on Good Friday, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Anyone else? Can someone tell me when he was born? What year was he born in, ish? Don't look at your phones, Mary. Yes, 1833. Can you give me the death year as well?
1896.
In 97. So he's 64 years old. He has a full life as a composer in the middle of the 19th century. And throughout this, sorry, Nancy, your hand went up. Yes?
I don't remember the university. They contacted him to give him an honor, which he
They
accepted.
did. It was,
and then he found out he had to compose a piece for them.
well, what happened is Cambridge University said, Herr Brahms, you are blowing up. You're doing super well. This is amazing. This is in the late 1860s, early 1870s, after the Requiem premieres. The Requiem premieres, and he goes B-A-N-A-N-A-S, bananas. Extraordinarily popular all of a sudden. And composes for every instrument, a clarinet quintet, clarinet trio, clarinet quartet, piano solo, piano trio, piano quartet, a cappella voices, organ chorales. He composes for everything. His compositional output is massive. He is then acknowledged for this large compositional output. And Cambridge University says, we would like to offer you and your friend an honorary doctorate. All we ask is that you compose a piece and come and conduct it or perform it in some significant way as a thesis project, and then we'll give you the doctorate. He just didn't want to go. He didn't want to travel to England. So he sent a piece. He sent a symphony that had already been premiered, and he sort of got the doctorate. He didn't actually show up for it. He tried to eat crow a little bit later with some other English individuals who were important in making that decision, and actually provided, not Cambridge University, but other important individuals who were involved in the salon music scene in England in that time, with a 4-hand version of the Requiem. There exists a version of the Requiem for 2 pianists at 1 piano with full vocal score, and it is a full orchestral reduction done by Brahms. And he approved that for salon performances in London and surrounding areas throughout the United Kingdom that might not have had the performance space, or in the 19th century, the piano was the instrument to have. Everyone had a spinet or a piano in their house, and so if they wanted to experience a big orchestral piece, it was really convenient to have it in that sort of realm. So Brahms is always a composer who's looking backwards, and in the first movement that we'll sing together, you're going to hear sounds that are much closer to Palestrina, that are much closer to Bach, that are much closer to Handel than Wagner and Liszt and Berlioz, all of the contemporary composers with whom he was composing. Brahms went against what was known as the German New School. The German New School wanted to experiment with brand new forms, didn't want stodgy symphonies and concertos in the normal form, wanted big fantasies and kind of things that were through composed and would spin out. Brahms was taught by an individual whose favorite composer was Bach, and for that we should all be very, very thankful. So in many forms, Brahms looked backwards at Baroque composers, and as part of this other group of composers like Schubert and like Mendelssohn, who composes in forms and structures of earlier pieces. He's also a very temperamental composer who is very self-critical. He actually composed pieces whenever he was a teenager, but would actually publish them under another name, a pen name. And he does have his very first piece that he was all right with actually publishing under his name, and it's a beautiful piano scherzo. Some of you might be familiar with it, but this is the very first piece that Brahms composed and was okay with calling his own. Multiple voices, multiple voice corresponds. But there's something angsty about it that makes it not Bach. There's something personally emotional about it that makes it not Bach. This is the other first piece he composed for the voice, the very first piece he composed for the voice. Sung by distribution.
O brich nicht Steg, du zitterst sehr, o stürz nicht Fels, du dreuest schwer, Welt geh nicht unter, Himmel fall nicht ein, Himmel fall nicht ein, bis ich mag bei der Liebsten sein, bis ich mag bei der Liebsten sein, bis ich mag bei der Liebsten sein.
That's it. It's less than a minute long, but still has something angsty in it, still has something emotional, and something that is churning personally that we can experience and relate to, but it's different than sacred music from the Baroque era in that way. It's just, there's something else in there. There's more of an emotional, personal core. Now, you all know Brahms from 2 pieces, whether or not you know that you know him. This is going to be the first piece that you might know him from movies or other sort of dance forms. It's a Hungarian dance number 5. Very popular. compose in what's known as the gypsy style in the middle of the 19th century as he interfaces with music of different cultures and writes many pieces that have a different flavor than German music. They just don't sound inherently German. Now, all of you will know him from this song, and he is the legitimate composer of this. Some of you might know what I'm about to play, many of you might not. Gute Nacht, Gute Nacht. This is Brahms' Lullaby. It's by Brahms, and it's originally arranged for piano and strings and set for voices and solo voice as well. Many of you will also know his Fourth Symphony, very popular rehearsal. Best. If you want to listen to a Brahms Symphony, number 4, John L. Gardner's recording, unbelievable. So the reason that I said earlier, the first piece that he would actually put his name to is because throughout his life, Brahms was very critical of his pieces. A piece would be premiered, he would edit it extensively, it would be premiered again, edit extensively, then it would finally be published. In addition to that, a score of pieces that he composed as a kid or as a young man were given to a close friend of his. And then later in his life, in the 1880s, he writes a letter to his friend saying, "Oh, I now recall that you have all of these old autographed manuscripts of mine. Would you mind please sending them to me? I'd be delighted to put them in this beautiful edition. Let me arrange them for you and write them back later." He got them back. And then, of course, she writes and is like, "Hey," like a few months later, "where are the tunes?" And, of course, he destroyed them immediately upon receipt of the tunes. And he writes to her like, the world should not see like the early scratchings of a composer. He was terribly embarrassed that music would be found out or music would be seen of his that he didn't find to be perfect. He was always questioning his music. He would never really thought it was good enough. He was always very self-deprecating as well. And this is a composer who is a master composer that we're really lucky to have something. So the phonograph, I think it is, the first wax cylinder recording device was created at the latter half of the 19th century. And Brahms was a big deal at this point. Okay, you're going to have to hang on a second. I'm so sorry for this. I had it queued up on a playlist, and this was going to be ready to go for you all. That's all right. This is absolutely necessary. This is Brahms' A wax cylinder recording device was sent to Germany, and Brahms was one of the very first musicians to interact with it and record. He introduces himself. "I'm Herr Dr. Brahms, Johannes Brahms," and then he plays one of his Hungarian dances. You'll hear his voice is kind of high and nasal. It's very high. In a letter to his father, he actually writes, "I've been working on my speaking voice, and you'll be pleased to hear that it's lower and more pleasing." It's fascinating. The quality of the piano, of course, is poor. We won't necessarily listen to that anymore. So that's just a little bit of the context of Brahms. Wonderful composer and a practical musician. The choir that first premiered the 6-movement version of the Brahms Requiem was a Singakademie. And the Singakademie was a chorus not too dissimilar from Master Chorale. The request from Brahms was 200 singers. They ended up with a little bit less than that. And guess what night they rehearsed on weekly? Monday nights. They had 8 weekly rehearsals, and then the week of performance, they rehearsed Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then they performed on Good Friday. And that was it. So Brahms was a conductor of a Frauenchor, a ladies' chorus as well. He had some awesome policies I'll share with you a bit later, but one is that if ladies were late to rehearsal, there was a really big issue with that in the choir. They had to pay a late tax. So whenever they came in, there was like a little can, and they had to put a little can, which I'd be fine with us instilling in this choir. It's kind of your Brahms primer, Brahms lecture, to get a sense of the individual whose music that we're going to interface with. We'll learn a little bit more about him through the context of this piece. He adds a piece where he talks about the love of a mother, embracing those that die and embracing those that suffer. And it just so happens that right around the composition of the Requiem in 1865, his mother passes away. And it affects him greatly. And Robert Schumann, just a decade prior, passes away, who was a very important musical figure to him and responsible for his professional career, essentially. So let's sing a little bit, please. Movement 1 of the Brahms. If you'd like to turn through some translations and other things that are provided for you in the score, we'll talk about those later. Just find page 1. Me and Susan are going to meet you at the choral entrance. Please sing to me on DAW. D-A-W. DAW. D-A-W. Okay, folks. So let's ask a few questions real quick. First, who has sung Rob's requiem before? Good. Hands are high, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 5. Okay. Hands down, sopranos. These hands up still. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, 10-ish out of these two. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 5. Okay, good. Thank you. So, then, hands raised for a second. Who's brand new to the piece in the choral? Okay, it's a gross majority. Okay, this is good. It's very exciting, and I'm so glad that we'll be able to share your first performance of this music, but it's a tough sing. Harmonically, it's a very challenging piece, and textually and emotionally, it's a very deep, very intense piece. Let's head right back to measure 15, please. The first page, measure 15. I know there are going to be questions of, what is the A arrow? I know that there's a bit of, what exactly do you want me to do? Like, do we take over? Do we just add? We'll talk about those spots to make sure that you're oriented to this chord. Let's start right at measure 15, please. Will everyone sing for me, please, on Do? D-O-H. D-O-H. Just a nice, solid F major chord. But altos, listen to your part once. Will you play the A to E flat? You have a tritone. That is your first tone, and it's sort of an augmented mystical seventh. That's the function of it, but just know that that's going to be a little tough. Here we go, please. Edge of the C, Do. 3 and up. 2, 3 and up. Here and from the standard Requiem. Just raise your hand. Anything that you notice different from the Mozart Requiem, even if I said it a little earlier. Yes, Monique?
It's in German.
Exactly right. It's in German. And we ought to spend a moment on the title of the Requiem, but let's keep going. It's in German. Someone else, please.
Starts in a major key.
Greg, I'm sorry?
Starts in a major key.
It does. It starts in F major, and most often we find Requiem masses, and a lot of them we find in D minor. And it's interesting that D minor, will you play that? The third of D minor is an F natural, but F major is the major third of D minor. So there might be a direct correlation. Probably not. It's probably convenient because he scores the very beginning for just bass, cello, and viola. Violins don't open with this big melodic line. All we hear, Susan, would you play the top at a kind of back easy pulse? We just kind of hear the heartbeat of the world for a moment. Just for a moment, we said that we're in an earthly landscape because we start so deep in the ground. This is something coming out of mortal beings. Someone else, please. Awesome. Thank you, Greg. Yeah, Nancy?
There's no Latin text.
Exactly right. No Latin text anywhere in the piece. And were you to look at the text and do a textual analysis, in fact, what you will find is all of these are excerpts from the Old and New Testament, and they are sort of stitched together. It is only movements 4 and movement, I believe it's 7, are the only movements that are complete excerpts of text, and then it's the movement that's settled. That's it. Everything else is like a couple stanzas here, and then we're going to put this in, and then we're going to finish this. And it's a little bit of a hodgepodge of different texts, but makes beautiful sense of itself. It really does. Anyone else? Anything else different? Yes, sir?
Well, I found it interesting that the bass is staccato and yet they're tied.
They are. That has to do with, that's a bowing thing.
Oh,
So what that means is, this is awesome. I love these sorts of questions because I'm an orchestra geek as well. Whenever a slur line is present for string players, it implies do it all in one bow direction. All up bow, so 1, 2, 3, 4, then down, 1, 2, 3, 4. But the fact that it's staccato also means he wants a little separation, which is why Susan pedals it to give it this nice legato feel, but pulses the notes as well. So she's replicating the notation that's there. But that's the function.
There's a separation?
There's separation, but the bow goes in the same direction, so it feels like it's one continuous heartbeat as opposed to beep, 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 which would cause something different. It would cause a different natural articulation. Anyone else? Yes, Stephen.
He doesn't spend a significant amount of time like establishing tonic. It's immediately traveling. It's always unsettled.
It is. It's always this kind of spiraling down staircase or spiraling up staircase. It's not just F major for 20 bars, intro, and then we come in. But it's this weird, it's something that curls. It's something that is in itself. Also, the title, Ein Deutsches Requiem, or a German Requiem. We ought to spend a moment on that. He titles it a German Requiem and sends it to the publisher. The publisher writes back and says, can you please provide me an English text so I can market it to the United Kingdom? And also, can you make a Latin version of this, please? And Brahms' response is, where would I find the Latin and who would it be for? That's not this piece. And he says, the English text I can do, and it's actually set with English text, and there is a tradition of performing it with different English translations. But he actually says about this piece, what's the quote from the letter? I will admit that I could happily omit the word German and simply say human requiem, or a requiem for mankind. In an effort to make this a more universal piece, he does not put it in a Catholic liturgy or in the Roman Catholic setting of the Latin text. In addition to that, throughout the piece, you won't notice this yet about it, and it's interesting it was performed on Good Friday. You will never say the words, Jesu Christe, Jesus Christ, at all. Christ is quoted in 2 moments throughout the piece, but there's no mention of Jesus Christ, with the idea that he wants this to be as approachable by all mankind, regardless of religion, personal beliefs, or confusion about beliefs. So he does this intentionally, but it creates a lot of confusion because in the premiere is on Good Friday. So the way they handle it is they do the first 3 movements, and after the first 3 movements, they sing, I know that my Redeemer liveth and is Messiah, the Hallelujah chorus, and several other pieces. There's an excerpt from the Bach St. Matthew Passion, because they have to acknowledge that Good Friday is the celebration of the crucifixion of Christ. And so they do that, and there is a nod to that, but then they go back to the piece, and Brahms did not conduct those excerpts. Another conductor who prepared the chorus for him conducted those excerpts. He only conducted his piece. It's a fascinating piece. Robin?
Question for your brain.
Yes.
Do you think that if Brahms were alive, or they wanted to perform it in Russia or France or any country with that language, would he be okay with them translating into their vernacular?
I don't know.
Kind of like pulling dialects of the current language.
I don't know. Their writings say that he's not the most comfortable with foreign languages, that he feels really uncomfortable trying to speak to someone in Italian or trying to speak to someone in Russian. I think the whole goal is trying to make the piece as universal. Like, yes, how can every human on the planet identify with this piece of music? Let's look at the text. Selig sind, blessed. Selig sind die Leid tragen, denn sie sollen getröstet werden. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are those who bear or have grief. He does not sing or set a translation in German of the typical Latin requiem. The typical Latin requiem would be Requiem aeternam, rest eternal for those that have gone on, and light everlasting for them. It is a prayer for the dead. His requiem starts with a prayer for the living. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. And he talks about the tears that they shall shed. Anyone who shed tears in honor of someone who we have lost, those tears shall ripen. You shall reap and sow the benefit of those tears. And your sadness will end in gladness and in joy. And you'll find that in every single movement of the Requiem, and the kind of takeaway, the after-school special final takeaway from the Requiem is sorrow will turn into joy. In some way or another, whatever it's anger, angst, terror, fear, it will always turn into joy resounding. Let's go back to measure 15. Here's F major. Good. Everyone's still on Do. We won't sing on German text. I know that will frustrate some of you. I don't care. 2, 3, and up. 1, 2, 3, and good. So let's talk about choral voicing for a moment. Susan, play the first chord. Play the second chord. Good. Play the E flat way louder for us. flat is the 7th. We need more of you. Will you circle it and write me, please, alto? Here we go once again with the F major chord. 2, 3, and. Good. Can you find a way altos not to activate through vibrato? Can I have the A to E flat? Can you just make it slightly brighter, please, for us? Here's everyone again on F major. 3 and up. 2, 3, and E flat with me. The mortals that are left on the planet are those that will mourn. And to me, it sounds like a Palestrina motet here more than anything else. May I have ladies alone on the C and F natural, please? This is the 4th, 5th measure of your entrance, so measure like 19-ish. You see where I'm at? 2, 3, and up. Go. Altos, go. It should just be perfect music to sing. It should be so rewarding to listen to and so rewarding to make. Here we go, bass and tenor, please. Same location, like 5th bar or so of your entrance. 2, 3, and do. Space. Go. Bass. Listen to your part once, please. Here's the A to E flat, 3 and up. 2 and. And lift. Good. Next, and they've got it. Everyone, please, right at that location. This is Tutti Ensemble. Edge of the C. 2, 3, and. 1, 2. Let's start one more time, please. Right there, letter A, 1, 2, letter A, and go. There we go. 2 and 3 and up. 2 and 3 and up. Bass, go, bass. And out, and. Singing beautiful. This is all kind of, you should sense it as very moving, but at the same time atmospheric. It really sets the stage for the entire Requiem and establishes it as a piece that is to comfort those here on earth. There are prayers for those who have passed on inherent in the piece, and it talks about dying and moving on, but a lot of this piece is about us coming to terms with our own mortality. And you all know I've programmed some dark, sad concerts. This is food for my soul. This is something that I think about. I read a lot of existential writings, and this is something very interesting to me personally. Good. Let's go on to movement 2, please. So movement 2 is 2 things simultaneously. It is a march and a chorale tune at the same time. Susan, would you mind playing for us just a little bit of the beginning? It happens in a very slow tempo, something like 1 and 2. And 1 and 2. 2 and 3. 1, 2 and 3. 2. Good, thank you. So there's this nice procession that just begins. You can imagine this incessant, absolute, consistent pulse tempo procession that is just exquisite and beautiful. Then we all enter in at letter A. We all enter in at letter A. Sopranos, will you just sing with the altos for right now so that you're a part of the rehearsal? Here we go, letter A. Everyone on D, please. D, D, D. 1 and 2. Careful. Careful. And lift. Back. And then don't sing again. Off. And 1. It goes, and then we churn up, we churn up, we churn up, we churn up, and then we get to 54, please. Downbeat of 54, everyone on da. And 1, and 2. Section that might be sung by a selection of the chorale because it's this light, fast, totally different movement. So the translation of the text here, "Det alles Fleisch," for all flesh is like grass, and all the magnificence of mortals like the flowers on, or like the flowers of the grass. And then, "Und die Blumen abgefallen," the top of page 14. The grass has withered, and the flowers have fallen away. It is this gorgeous little movement. Can we start at the bottom of 13? Alto and tenor. It's a B flat and D natural. Good. Would you play just into the next bar? Excellent. Thanks. Here we go, please. Da. 1. Just alto and tenor. Oh, yes, soprano 2. I'm sorry, you're joining. You're in. Here we go. 1 and 2. Press and 1. Bass. Good, thank you. Can we start top of 14, second bar, please? Top of 14, second bar. And can you all, the crescendo needs to be a bit more significant to abgefallen. Abgefallen. It's got to be a little bit more. Here we go. And 1. Basses and excellent. Let's get a little more sensitive, please. Let's head right back into 54. This is something that is anger. This is something that is labor. This is something that is from the earth. There's a little bit of begging for some sort of relief from this. Here's the B flat. We'll start on the downbeat note. 2 and 154. 2. And the march returns. It's beautiful, it's awesome, it's amazing. And then there's this huge fugue thing, this Die Erlöser des Herrn werden wiederkommen. You can see, we won't go through that right now. Good, let's go on please, just for a moment, to movement 3, please. And in movement 3, I'd like you to start please at, you know what, start at the beginning of movement 3, which is on page 28. Page 28, please. Good. I'll perform this lightly for you, but I would like you to just hear the material that is the baritone solo. Then we're going to flounder on this pedal just a little bit. Susan, would you just give me the end there? Okay, here we go. The end of 1.
Ziel hat und ich davon muss und ich davon muss.
And you all. Self-reflective. Herr, lehre doch mich. Lord, teach me that das ein Ende mit mir haben muss, that I must have an end, und mein Leben ein Ziel hat, and that my life has an end. This is something that we have to accept. And you can hear, listen, will you listen to the tremolo? Susan, will you play the beginning? Yeah. The speaker is so terrified that they have to admit that they have to die, but you come to terms with it in this movement. And the baritone solo is trying to reconcile and goes through a few stages of grief, actually, and finally of acceptance. And this movement, 3 and 6, the 2 baritone solo movements are insanely difficult, but so beautiful and so wonderful. And then 4 and 5 provide such an exquisite release. We're going to go a little bit further into the movement. This movement has everything. You essentially have a choral cadenza, like a Handelian cadenza. You sort of have that in this. Find page 38. Okay, in the middle system of page 38, and let's talk for a moment about the circle A, B1, that stuff. If you're an alto and you see A on your line with a circle and an arrow pointing down to the tenor line, it means I want you to add to the tenor line. That will happen throughout the entire score. Bass 1, you'll jump up to the tenor line a couple of times in the score. At tenor, you'll jump down to the bass line a couple times too. There are some lines where I have the soprano sing the alto part for like 4 full measures, and you don't sing the alto part. You're still singing the tenor part. Then you jump back up, and you'll kind of find out where those spots are. But that's what those symbols mean. It means I've got to have you add down there, sopranos add down there, and we help each other because we have different strengths, and Brahms makes this like a 2-octave piece for the sopranos, and basically that for the altos too. So let's all read, please, the alto line for a moment. At the bottom of page 38, last bar. It's the printed alto line. Yes, and we're in a totally different key than the beginning as well. And this is cut time. Half note gets the pulse. So listen for a moment. Can we just play it with me? Oh, that's low A. That's really low for me. 1 and 2 and 3 and da 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 da. That's all I'd like to do. That is the main theme, and it's amazing and stunning and awesome. So would everyone look at the alto line, sing in whatever octave is comfortable for you on da. 1 and 2 and 3 and da 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 da. is a little different. So will you listen, please, to the tenor only, and alto and tenor, who are going to sing that, and bass ones, just listen to the tenor entrance, which is the beginning of the fugue. And that all of a sudden is a minor third. It's higher than what the altos had. So just caution and be aware of that. So everyone knows the tune. Everyone stand, please. Good luck. I'll see you at the end of the fugue. But wait a second. I want you to notice something. Susan, will you play just the left hand of your part at your leisure? Just play the white notes. Just play the white notes.
The white note.
Yeah, the half notes. Let's go, like 176, 176, top of 39, top of 39. Yes, top of 39. This is known as a pedal fugue. All you have is this D tonic pedal throughout, and it is called the eternal D. Here we go, please. On da. On da starts with tenor, alto, and bass 1. 3 and 4 and 1 and da 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 and 3 and alto soprano So, it's a tough movement, yeah? It is the best line is the tenor. There's a suspension chain here and 8 notes. It is such powerful and amazing music. Don't be intimidated by it. Don't be afraid of it. We will have sectional rehearsals on the fugue. It sings, meaning when the fugue does fit in the voice. Upon reading it initially, it will seem overwhelming, but once you do it in a couple of sectionals, part-specific and then gender-specific sectional, it will start to make a little bit more sense for you. If you turn the page, you go to a movement we know. Of course. So thank goodness we know that. We won't sing through movement 4 right now. We won't sing through movement 4 tonight. But For those of you that are new in the ensemble, we performed Movement 4 as a part of our early November concert series. So that is not a movement we will rehearse significantly. It is a movement we will never do in sectionals, and we won't teach notes to. So if you are new to that piece, if you are not familiar with Movement 4, that's going to be some extra homework for those of you that were not a part of the beginning of the year concert series. It's an extraordinary work, though. So for the second half of rehearsal, we'll continue talking through the piece. We'll skip over Movement 4, which is a lovely little relief and keystone in the piece. And then, of course, the next movement after the break we'll get to is going to be Movement 5. I'm particularly excited for Movement 5 for one special reason, and I think y'all will be too, is our guest artist and soprano soloist is in the room, Miss Robin Lambert. Robin came and we did a little mini coaching of the piece actually. When was it, Robin? In September or October, something like that? And it's going to be really quite beautiful. So Robin will sing in the choir for the performance. We'll find a way to get her off stage, maybe after Movement 2 or after Movement 3. She'll make some sounds a little bit higher, and then we'll come out as our guest artist soprano soloist. And our bass baritone soloist is a guy named Douglas Williams, who you all might remember. He was our bass soloist for Lord Nelson Mass, which was chosen as one of the top 10 performances that year at South Florida Classical Review. So I'm really looking forward to the show. And this semester we have a lot of changes. So we're about to head into our announcement segment, but before we do that, I ought to introduce the individual who's going to be giving announcements. I worked for about 2.5 years with Florida Singing Sons. I was their artistic director and led them through an international tour and a national tour. On the national tour, I was privileged to work really close with Miss April Green and Tim Brumfield, who all of you know, and Susan, of course, was an accompanist for us for about a year and a half as well. In addition to that, we had who is basically referred to as the head choir parent. And this head choir parent kept everyone organized, was right there for me whenever I needed anything, was sensitive and kind to all of the students, but also made sure that absolutely everything was taken care of. And I can't express to you how rewarding the relationship was. In particular, when we went on an international tour together in Spain, and this individual was responsible for like social security copies and IDs and passports, health information, and a host of other things. Caroline Casey knows her, April Green knows her, Strauss family knows her, Austin Scott, who's not here right now, knows her, but several of you, Carl knows her as well. Several of you know her already, and I'm so looking forward to introducing her. Please give a warm master chorale welcome to our new chorus administrator, Miss Kathy Sedlak.
I want to tell you that you all sound wonderful to me, and I need that while I'm sitting there shuffling papers just to relax. And it really helps, so keep it up. But I'm really happy to be here and working with you all. Please bear with me the first week or so, 2 weeks. I'm trying to straighten things out with rosters and people getting emails and not getting emails, and there were some issues with it, and I'm trying to straighten it out, but it's taking a little while. Between the fact that I don't know you all, I'm trying to associate names with faces, and I'm trying to associate a roster with an attendance sheet and everything else. But I'm getting to it. You know, Brett has already said, you know, I work with Singing Sons, but I also work with Broward County Schools for a little over 30 years as many things. But the last job was as a principal, and I've also worked downtown at the district. So. You know, I miss doing things, and I've been retired for not quite 2 years now, and looking forward to working with you all. Okay? So I have a few announcements. If you're not on the seating, well, if you're weren't on the seating chart tonight or the sign-in, and I know bases, there's a few of you. There was a big mess there. I think I've straightened it out now. As far as those of you who signed in on the bottom. I know that you weren't on there, so I've got you. I think there were a few of you. If your voice part was wrong or your name wasn't spelled right, just see me at the break and let me know, and I will make sure I make the corrections. And also, if you did not get, last Thursday we sent out noteworthy news. If you didn't get it, there were some issues with emails. So if you didn't get that, please let me know. If you're brand new and you auditioned tonight,
You didn't get it, we know that, so. But if you are not a new member and you didn't get it, please let me know. A reminder, I know Carol was doing such a good, Carol and April over here, that spring dues, they're due by January 29th, so please get that in. Your music, $15 for Brahms and $10 for Broadway. We should have the other Broadway.
Absolutely, we will.
Okay. And concert attire, if you're brand new, you got an email, because I already sent them. An email about attire for concerts. If you have to adjust something and you've already been in, please get it done quickly, because I understand sometimes there's a little bit of a lag time. But I'd like to introduce, especially to the new people, is Leah here? Where's Leah?
Yeah,
Leah is in, if you have questions about women's concert attire, and Mark, if you
Are
have.
we using red for Broadway?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm working on it. And if you audition tonight, please see me at the break. I have a paper for you, and Brett, you were going to talk.
Excellent. So I've got just a couple of quick announcements. Then Nancy's got a quick announcement.
Let's do
and
that one at
Bert
the end.
is-
Let's
okay.
do it at the end.
Then Bert's got an announcement too, but I want to talk to you all quickly about chamber choir and Bocelli rosters. There was some roster mismanagement this last semester, and emails that should have gone to the entire choir were only going to folks in Messiah or in the Duraflay Requiem. So when there were big surveys about stuff in the spring, some of you may have missed out on them. So I just want to let everyone know a couple of things. Number one, about 90 of you have responded regarding Bocelli, whether or not you're interested. New singers and singers who have not yet responded about Bocelli, whether or not you want to do it. We just need to know yes or no to give everyone a fair shot. Kathy is going to send an email out later this week to everyone with details for rehearsal and commitment to Bocelli. And all you have to do is respond to that email, yes, I'm interested, consider me, or no, I'm not available and I can't do it. Just because you say, yes, I'm interested, unfortunately doesn't mean that we will definitely have a spot for you. It's only 60 singers that we can accept, and then we can have a list of alternates, because historically folks have dropped out of that concert series. So again, if you have not really heard about Bocelli, or you didn't get that survey for some reason, do not worry. You're going to be on an email list, including our new members, and you'll be able to respond to that email, yes, I'm interested, no, I'm not, don't worry about it. In addition to that, we have responses from those of you who were interested in the chamber choir, which had a little read-through rehearsal yesterday. The chamber choir, non-audition. It is an interest-only chamber choir this semester. We want to feel it out. We want to get a sense of the culture of a chamber choir in this ensemble. I'm really excited about it, and I'm a little nervous about it. And I'll tell you that the excitement I have is we need to have a representative, smaller group that is more nimble than this ensemble. We just need it, absolutely. And on some of our concert series, I would like to do some small ensemble music that's not appropriate for 120, but is appropriate for 36. I would love to do that. I think it's healthy and good for our group. But whenever groups like this create chamber choirs, sometimes it affects the culture of the group negatively. Right now, there is no audition for the chamber choir. People who are interested in it can let us know their interest. And again, another email is going to be sent out about that in case you haven't gotten it. And that's going to be how the chamber choir is run. But we have an excellent choral culture right now. We take pride in excellence. We have a lot of fun, but we work really hard. Things are going well. And when groups create chamber choirs that are audition-based, sometimes there's a favorite children and not. That happens in the ensemble. And so this is something that we're going to have to talk about carefully as an ensemble and as an organization, that do we want this? Are we willing to accept some of those difficult growing pains that are inherent in that? Or is maybe the chamber choir interest only and it really just goes out and does weddings and gigs and things like that? So the reason that the chamber choir this semester is interest only is it's a little bit of a lab version of the chamber choir. We want to figure it out because I don't want to roll out anything in this organization that's going to affect our progress. We're doing really well right now, and so I want to make that decision really carefully. So those are my two quick announcements. Nancy will give her announcement at the end, and Fran maybe wants to make a quick announcement.
Yeah, I do.
Yep, really quick.
So you'll see there's some food out there on the table. That is for you to, your sustenance to get through the second half of rehearsal. But it's also a fundraiser for the organization. So you'll see a little dish there to put a little paper would be nice in there, and help yourself to the snack. In addition, the snacks provided by our members, and I'll be looking for volunteers to add to the list. The more people who volunteer, the less frequently you have to provide. So if you look in the next noteworthy news, there will be a section for snack with my email, so please contact me if you're willing to get on the list.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Fran. And so the final announcement of our break is going to be given by Bert Latomsky. Bert is spearheading and in charge of a big fundraising event that's taking place in just a month or so. So please give your attention to Bert.
Hi, thank you, Brett.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. So I'm here to remind you again about our fundraising auction, art auction, which is February 24th. And I'm going to ask some people to stand very quickly because I want you to get to know who they are and what they're going to do. Michael Ferris, Laura Parker, Danielle Berman, Santiago Bounce, Fran Goldenberg, and Randy Zinkas. These folks are responsible for subsets of our auction responsibilities. It is a huge amount of work. They are going to need your help in making sure that this becomes a success. This is a big deal for us, folks. It is potentially our biggest fundraising effort throughout the season. We need everybody's help to make that a success. We're not going to discuss individual needs right now. I'm going to put those in one. Oh, my God, I almost said one voice.
No worthy news.
Wash my mouth out with license to go. I'll be asking Kathy to send that out in our emails. Y'all can sit down. Two things I want you to be very cognizant of. Starting next week, we are going to be passing out tickets and asking you to sell them. That is Randy Zinkas' responsibility. And he's going to need help with that. But we also, in order to make this thing a success, we need donations from folks apart from the wide variety of art that is going to be offered by our auctioneering company. And that means I want you to start thinking about whom you can contact to bring to the table trips, services, doctor's visits, lawyer services, other professionals, etc. One of the auction items that our esteemed conductor has offered to provide, and yes, Steve, that's probably worth 2 flips, is dinner with Brett.
It's either a blessing or a curse.
So this is the type of.
Are you cooking?
This is the type of item that we need. Again, I'll talk more about that in the notations. If you have any specific questions about it, please feel free to ask me at break. And thank you for your kind attention.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bert. So, folks, we're going to head into a break, and we'll be back right at 9:20. Thank you so much. This is the translation I subscribe to. A commodity of this is in the program. It's awesome. And in addition to it, you see Matthew 5, Psalms, you see all the different books of the Bible or from the Old or New Testament that the texts come from. So it helps to organize it and give you an idea of the origin of the text as well. Underneath the German text is the actual word-for-word translation. Then adjacent is the transliteration, or a poetic translation. It reads a little smoother on the right column. Turn the page, please. At the bottom of what says page 96, on the bottom of what page 96, you'll find a little bit of information about the text and the origin of the text and how it was selected. If you turn the page again, you'll find kind of a chart organization of the text, which helps organize it, and you can see that movement 4 is the keystone of the piece, but kind of the centerpiece of the requiem as well. Then on the opposite page, you'll see Quick Guide to IPA. IPA stands for the International Phonetic Alphabet. And what you see on the left side are symbols. These are symbols that are used by every single country on the planet to signify a certain sound, even if the letter they use in the spelling of a certain sound is different than an English or American letter. So these symbols represent the sound, and then there's a sounds like column for English. So for instance, look at the third symbol down. It looks like a lowercase e. That is A in made or A in wait. It is a closed E. So that is like sehen, or selig. It is a closed E sound. So this is just a quick and dirty guide for those of you that might be new to IPA. If you turn the page again, you'll see Quick Guide to IPA with some German comments, talking about combination vowels for umlauts like müssen, and a few others that you'll find later like trösten, which we've already encountered, but to the same. Then the next page, you see Singer's Babel. Singer's Babel has the IPA of every single word in the entire Requiem. So you see first the English text. Blessed are who hear sorrow carries, or blessed are those who mourn, is the poetic translation. Then you see the German text, selig sind die da Leid tragen. Then you see the IPA. The IPA gives a phonetic spelling of the text. We start with the Z sound. Z, and that's closed E. Selig, die laut, selig sind die da Leid tragen, a schwa at the end. So this is just to help you with pronunciation of the German text throughout your study of the piece, and you will have specific homework assignments that will ask you to make sure you come prepared with language. There are a lot of words in this piece, and so German or singing in German is very difficult for you. Make sure that you are portioning some time for this. In addition to that, many of you in the room have already received, and if you haven't, you'll get in a homework email this week. There are practice tracks linked for Brahms' Requiem already created and organized in folders. I got them, Stephen organized them in folders for us, and they're really straightforward. There are two large folders. One is for diction practice. For the diction practice, it will open up a video, and the video will show the words on the screen, and you will hear a native speaker speak the words. Then they will leave a few seconds for you to repeat and practice. It is an awesome practice resource for those of you that might not be familiar or comfortable with singing in German. In addition to that, we have pitch tracks. That is just your part with the accompaniment at kind of a lower grade, but your part's at 100, and the accompaniment is at like 60 or 70%. So you all will get a homework email from me by Wednesday morning. That homework email will include a link to a Google Drive that has those two folders, and you can download these files to your computer. You can put them on your tablet, you can put them in iTunes, you can put them on your phone, but they should be around. This piece should be kind of in your zeitgeist. In addition to that, I'm going to send you links to two performances. The orchestral recording I like is John Elliott Gardner. It's amazing. It's the Monteverdi Choir, and it's not English Baroque soloist. It's his romantic orchestra, but John Elliott Gardner conducting the Brahms Requiem is my favorite choral recording of the piece. In addition to that, you're going to get another recording that's not with orchestra, but it's four hands piano, and I'm singing on it as well. Seraphic Fire and an educational organization called the Professional Choral Institute, which is in residence at Aspen Music Festival this summer, released a Brahms Requiem album. I was the assistant chorus master of the piece. I know the work very well, which is why I know some of the history, and it just comes naturally. I love and absorbed this piece many years ago, and I'm so glad to see it again and to work with you all on it in a very different context. There were like 40 singers and four-hand piano version of it, and it was also nominated for the best choral performance for a Grammy, actually, that year too. Sarah Quick is on that recording as well in the soprano section, so it's awesome. We'll share that those two recordings. One, they sound totally different. The tempi are like, couldn't be more different as well. So I'll share those links with you as well, and if you'd like to purchase those recordings or listen to some previews, certainly you'll be welcome to. Good, so we're going to now move on to movement 5. This is at page 61, 54, and we are going to invite our guest artist, soprano soloist, to come down and give us a little preview. So we all a little shy. And Robin, you're comfortable with gong, bong, ging, gong, ging, gong,
We'll see.
And into it. So would you mind starting at Ich will euch wieder, measure 16 into 17? Lovely job. Bravo. So we'll talk just a bit about this movement. And if you look back at the translation of this movement, it's really important. And it has a lot to do with the placement of this movement, the composition of this piece. So Brahms started composing the Requiem in 1865, 66. It kind of premieres in 67, 68 in different ways. Its first premiere, actually only the first 3 movements were performed. That was it. And so there's a feeling of kind of a soft ending point there, sort of an intermission point, which is why at the next premiere of the complete Requiem, after the 3rd movement, they inserted all this stuff. Because it was Good Friday, the piece made no reference to Christ, and they were performing at a church. It just had to be done, so they inserted the music. And so that was the honor, and that was the arrangement of that concert. Neither of those performances included this movement. Following the first full premiere, this was a 6-movement work. It was not a 7-movement work. So we see also in the Requiem, just like his symphonies and many other works and songs, Brahms took the piece after a couple of different performances, and prior to actually publishing it, after hearing it in person, he decided to add an extra movement. And this movement, movement 5, you now have sorrow, but I want to see you again. Your heart shall rejoice, and no one shall take your joy from you. Look upon me. I have toiled and labored a brief time, and now I have found great comfort. I want to comfort you as one is comforted by his mother. And it's, of course, significant in this realm that Brahms lost his mother in 1865 when he begins to compose this. So there's a certain idea that the speaker is possibly the mother or is involved in the singing of this. There's sort of a lullaby aspect to it, but not quite. So we'll talk a little bit more about Movement 5. It's a Pips chorus for us, a Gladys Knight and the Pips for us. We are not the main event. It's an easy learn and an easier sing for us. So it won't be one of those movements that we dig into in every rehearsal, like 1, 3, and 6, and 7. Those we will all the time. But it's lovely and beautiful. And Robin, that's so gorgeous. I'm so looking forward to working with you. We're really honored to have you joining us. Okay, so let's look over at movement 6, please. This is on page 61, movement 6, page 61. Oh my God, it's just perfect music. I love this so much. Okay, this is in 4, and you're going to sing on Do, D-O-H, Do, D-O-H. Movement 6. 1, 2, and 2, and up. Okay, so this movement's awesome. It's great. Find the vivace at 65. And Susan, will you just play some parts with us there in the C minor chord? Start a vivace, which is bar 82 at the bottom of page 65. This is when the trumpet sounds. He uses the word hosanna, which is usually used to reference trombone in orchestral music. But here we go, please, on da. 1, 2, da. staccato, secco, please, dry. Once again, 1, 2, and. Good, thank you. So that's your tune, and you kind of do that a lot. Altos, please, together. 1, 2, and. Whoa, whoa, here's a G though. Can we coalesce to that G? 1, 2, and. Yes. Yeah, great guess. Great, that's fine. That's a fine guess. Here's the G, and then here's the A, and then back to the G, then A. Good. So all we're going to do now is, would you sing for me, please, at shop? G, B flat, A flat. Will you play those 3 pitches? It's the last measure. Good. Just that. 1, 2, and da. And then leave it. Good. Once again, 2 and up. Leave it. Good. Now what I want is B natural, G, B flat, A flat. Would you play that, Susan? Listen again. 1 and 2. Again and go. Good. And we've got I'm not going to make a lot of comments on tone color, but this isn't the beautiful, warm mother alto. It's da, da, da. It's very bright. Everyone's bringing their own tone color to the party. Will you just sing a little bit softer and as a corporate unit, not, I got the note, now I got it too. Just sing a little bit more. Just sing into the section. Don't sing isolated. Good. Now can we start, please, at Zauna? So the C. Good. Can you start there, right on the C? 1 and 2 and da. Da, 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 da. Again, ready, and up. That's okay. And here is the deep Zauna. So here's the A flat. Would you play the lick? Here we go. 1 and 2. Good. Let's leave it. Let's sing with sopranos, please. G and C natural. 1 and 2 and up. And short. Hang on a second. Ladies in the soprano section, you get 3 C naturals. C, then C. Then all of a sudden it is a major, or what it's going to feel like you go to the major third C minor that you wrap. Good. Let's sing together again, please. That same location. Vivace. Here we go at da. 1, 2, and. Okay, sit. Gentlemen, would you stand, please? Here's measure 82. Guys, together. This is the trumpet of the apocalypse sounding. Here we go. 1 and 2 and da. Good. Everyone stand, please. I know it feels like a Frankenstein monster right now. Like we sort of got it, we're walking, but fire bad is like the feeling right now. Here's measure 82, C minor. Good luck. Susan, will you play loud? Here we go. 1, 2, and. Okay. I do. Don't tell them that. Only boss. Okay, so we get to the bottom of page 69, and a very important word appears, T-O-D, tot, which means dead. Which means dead. And then at the top of page 70, wo ist dein Stachel? Tot. Yes, death, where is thy sting? You all might be familiar with a very different setting of this text from Messiah. Oh, death, where is thy sting? Oh, death, where is thy sting? It's like a soprano, alto, or a tenor alto duet. Very different interpretation of that text here, and different than anything we've heard. Remember for a moment, Susan, will you play the low pulsing Fs? Yeah, with a pedal. And then just play the E flat. Totally different than this atmospheric, blessed are those who mourn. Now it is, death, where is thy sting? I will exist in spite of you, and yes, although I must die, you will pass through me, and you are only an instant before everlasting. It's just the most heroic building up, angry, PO'd, but so rewarded at the end. And we have all of this insane harmony, which we heard just in the alto part, very difficult keystone part that's responsible for some modulations and some advanced harmony and secondary dominance throughout this location. Then we get to the middle of page 70. And Susan, could you play for us choral parts, middle of page 70, measure 3. Just kind of slow and connected. Middle of page 70, second system, third bar. And all of a sudden there's a sequence here. It's a suspension chain sequence, and it's out of insanity. All of a sudden it is in the face of death. Where is thy sting? I feel it not. And I'm going to sing in this well-known form that has been passed on to me from Bach, and it was passed on from Buxtehude and Schutz and Kuhnau and Gabrieli and Monteverdi. And all of a sudden, all of these advantageous romantic harmonies go away, sort of, for a moment, and all we have is this like Baroque moment sequence that sounds like it should be in Handel and Bach, and it's so marvelous. May we start, please, there, and then we're going to back up into it. And we might get to movement 7. Movement 7 is glorious, too. Let's start, please, middle of page 70. The third measure. Let's start with the ladies only. Oh, no, you know what? Let's just start tutti. Let's go for it. Here we go. Sorry about this. Good. Just on da. This is middle of page 70, third measure. Middle of page 70, third measure. 1, 2, da. It's a bad page turn, but it's the start of this moment. Susan, will you play for us the unison C sharp at the end of page 69? Good. And then let's go to the next entrance and see. We have C sharp, E sharp, G sharp, C sharp. So let's start at that location slowly in 3. As best you can, please follow the markings, which means if there's an 8th rest, please honor it as such. Here's the unison C sharp, just on da. 1, 2, and good, so let's take a second here. Basses, you've got it tough. Here's the high C sharp for the basses, and then will you play the bass line for them? But you've got the octave lead prior to. Will you sing that once for me, basses, in 158, 1 and 2, and sing. I'm bringing my own technique. Da, 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 da. But da, 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 da. With the idea that you must tune with the other humans around you, not just sing near to them. 1, 2, and da, 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 da. Yeah, much better. The intonation is still rough, but much, much, much better. Tenors, will you listen to your line starting on the E sharp? That's the sexy one. That's the one. Here we go. 1 and 2 and da, 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 da. You get the little leading tone to the C sharp. Good. Altos, listen to yours. That's pumpkin spice latte. It's a little basic, but you got so much earlier. So here we go, please. Here's the G sharp. 1 and 2 and da. Da, 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 da. Yeah, some of you use a very open. The board isn't. It's not close enough for me. Some of you need to work on density of tone and vowel. Da, 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 da. Is a large circle, and imagine for a moment that you're in a science class, and what I've done is drawn dots all around the circle, and they're kind of spread out, all the dots. Da, 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 da. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Your tone is so diffused right now. It's spread out in both vowel and the way that you concentrate core of your tone. And you might hear it around you, you might not. It might be you, it might not be you. But find a way to concentrate the tone and not allow it to be diffused. Do you understand this word in the model that I'm good? Would you sing it once again, please? Let's hope it's immediately better. 1, 2, and. Yeah, there's one right at the end. There's one caboose that's a little late to the party and isn't quite making the change, but for many of you, it was much improved. Thank you. Sopranos, here's your lick. Yours is the tune, and you should sing it right. Here we go, please. 1 and 2 and up. Yeah, but one lady went da, bra, da, and whack-a-mole right up. Da, 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 within the texture, please. 1, 2, and. Excellent adjustment. Thank you so much. Let's back up, please. Bottom of page 69, everyone on the unison C sharp. That's slow, just nice and easy. Let's just learn some pitches for the last few minutes. Here we go, please. 1 and 2 and 3. Let's do that once again, because that was not as successful as I anticipated. Would you try singing it connected once? So, da, 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 da. If you sing it connected, it's going to be easier for you to sense the pitches and intonation. Here we go, please. 1 and 2 and up. there's a lot of work initially. We're going to be in the coal mine, so to say, in rehearsals, but it is unbelievably, this is like a B minor mass reward at the end of it. I promise you that.